Hello and welcome back, and that is right, today I want to talk about some frankly bloody big NAS. Recently UniFi introduced their new U-NAS Pro 7 NAS rack mount server into the market, and although this is their first entry, let's be realistic, you as consumers, home users, business professionals or whatever are probably looking at the market share and thinking about what to go for. And I think it would be fair to say that one of the biggest comparisons users are going to make is comparing the UniFi NAS versus Synology, currently the market leader across a number of different sub-genres of the network attached storage industry. Some of you might think it's kind of unfair to compare UniFi's first solution versus, frankly, the entire history of Synology NAS, where they're at right now, but end users are going to do that, and that's what this video is about. I'm going to be talking about price, I'm going to be talking about hardware, I'm going to be talking about what you get for your money. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about software, by the way, and there are chapters all the way along the bottom. But I think it's first talking about right now price and value. But I've got to give UniFi and of course Ubiquiti some credit here for nailing down that $499 price tag on their first solution here. It's a good price, an exceedingly good price indeed, for a 7-bay rack mount solution with 10G on board. It's an ARM based processor, which isn't fantastic, but it has got 8GB of memory there, and given that it's got the integrated software in there, so it's a combined turnkey solution, $499 is very, very good. Half dev rack at that as well. Now on the Synology side of things, of course, I've mentioned huge variety of solutions, but if we use that $499 and the hardware standpoint that we just said there on the UniFi side, we can kind of nail things down a little bit on the Synology side. So for example, at $499, depending on where you shop around, the best price you're gonna, the best Synology you're gonna get for that price tag is probably the DS93. It's a dual-core x86 processor that can be scaled up to 10GBE, but it is a 4-bay desktop solution there. When it comes to the rack mount side, you only got a couple of options. You've got like this device here. This is the RS422 Plus, a 4-bay dual-core x86 ARM-based processor, an ARM x86 AMD-based processor, and that's $599 there. There is an 8-bay solution, but then you're getting closer to $1,000. So, at least in terms of price and value, you gotta give UniFi credit for their first solution rocking out the gate at a very, very good price tag. But there's no avoiding that the sheer depth, height and selection of solutions from Synology just give you a better value point depending on your own hardware needs. Perhaps you need more storage, perhaps you need more power, perhaps you need more bandwidth. You can scale your budget a great deal better right now on Synology, and with 25 years in the biz, not a huge surprise. But let's dig a little deeper into that hardware. We mentioned before that the UniFi or the U-NAS Professional there arrives with a quad-core ARM based processor. It's a Cortex V8, and it arrives with 8GB of unupgradable, non-upgradable I should say, DDR4 memory. It's got a single 10GBE port, it's got an extra 1GB port there on the front, and it's got 7 SATA bays there on the front. It doesn't have a redundant power supplier. It's got a low power consumer device as well, and it arrives with UniFi's Drive software as well that integrates very, very well into the rest of UniFi's ecosystem there. So that's really what you're getting. There's no flash solutions, there's no NVMe, there is no limitations with regards to hard drives. You can use their own hard drives or any number. I've tested all the way up to 24 TB Seagates, all worked absolutely fine, and it is a rack mount solution. There are currently no desktop solutions in their portfolio. Now, how do things compare on the Synology side? Unsurprisingly, Synology in terms of hardware has got it all. To put it into perspective, notwithstanding the fact that the CPUs across the range, they've got 32-bit ARM, 64-bit ARM, x86 AMDs and Intels, and multi-controller and redundant controller devices as well. They've got the DS, the RS, the VS, the NVR, the DVA, the B series, the UC, the DP, the GS. They have an enormous range of components that you would not be surprised by after more than 2 decades in the biz. But it has to also be highlighted that Synology has come down quite strictly on a lot of their compatibility of late. So a lot of their more modern solutions, the range of supported and compatible hard drives on their websites have diminished quite a lot. And a lot of users have not been a huge fan of that. Also, for all of the great stuff I talk about their hardware, and definitely in this comparison, Synology have got the better hardware on the table, literally and globally. it has to be said that generally in the NAS market, they prioritise the software over the hardware, and therefore the general price point for the hardware isn't as good. They're still arguably the market leader, but it has to be said in terms of hardware, there are still better options out there. Nevertheless, it is still better hardware than what we're seeing included with the UniFi system. But hardware is not really where it's at with these. Both of these brands target a complete, easy-to-use solution more than anything. So we need to focus on the software. Let's be realistic, it was always going to be a case of software when comparing the UniFi NAS system and a Synology NAS system. As you can see here on the screen on the left hand side, we've got the UNAS Pro's drive software here looking at, and on the right hand side we have got Synology's DSM platform. I've had to half screen them here, but as you can see you can full screen them, and they are both adaptive. So if we go ahead and select each one, you'll be able to see that they do stretch accordingly depending on which one you choose to use. So the first thing I want to discuss is presentation, because wowee, they have gone a very different way indeed. If we start with the UniFi, this is the newer of the two, and again, I'm going to keep harping on about this. You have to remember there is 25 years difference between these two in terms of NAS presentation, but on the UniFi side of things, that's the key word, the UniFi side of things. They very much emulated the user interface that we've seen previously from UniFi systems. We've got the site manager there. We can go ahead and sort of take ahead and a kind of overview of all of our different devices that are on a UniFi network. But of course, I've made sure to disable my UDM system here because we only want to focus on the NAS system in this video. Logging in to the NAS system there, the user interface is a lot more analytical, a lot more textual. We've got information on the storage system there that we can have a look at. We can break that down. And a lot of these breadcrumb level options here, each one going into the next. And one of the earliest kind of rules we can see when it comes to the presentation and the UX of the UNAS Pro is that they're trying to keep things all on a single pane. All the information's there. We've got the backup schedule there with backups that have failed, not failed, or ones that are currently in progress. There at the bottom we've got the throughput and activity on the system. We've got their individual file services that have been enabled, users, the works, and each one of them, if we connect with them, they do open up into their own tabs. So simplicity is what they're going for there, but with a hint of a lot of text. I know it's not going to be for everyone, but it has to be said that this is very much the UniFi way. And if you start using any kind of UniFi controller or UniFi storage software system, you often see the presentation being made in this manner. So even though this is their first NAS, this is very much their own in-house style. Now the Synology NAS with DSM goes a very different way. They've gone very much for a kind of desktop PC, tablet, Mac based experience. Everything is much more reactive and graphical. Already you can see the wallpaper there, which of course you can change. Personalization, stuff like that, all of that can be changed very, very quickly there in the background. Display preferences, different ways it can be seen. But moreover, we've got an app center there. We've got the ability to install third-party apps and first-party apps that we'll talk about later on. The control center is a lot more icon-based, a little bit more like Windows control panel for that matter. And just the presentation in general feels a lot more like a standalone PC, all of which running from the web browser. I'm purposefully not focusing on a mobile user interface here, because although both of them can technically be controlled by the mobile applications from both brands, Synology have got more and they're a lot more tailored. I wanted to focus a lot more on the desktop experience, and I hope that's coming across. But the icons are bigger on the Synology side of things. Also, whereas the UniFi has gone for that single pane with which you have to then break down very granularly into different features and services, the Synology has gone for separating things into kind of applications. So if you want to go into security, you open up the application for security. If you want to go into file management, there's their file station, but they have a separate one for drives. They've got separate ones for multimedia. Everything's separated into icons and kind of in an app style. And the way things are presented in different cases, so for example, if we look at the way storage is presented, this is how storage is presented on the UniFi platform, and here is how it's presented on the Synology platform. There's a lot more text on the UniFi side. The Synology one is far more graphical. Let's zoom out a little bit there on that one. We can see we've got the layout of the system there. We've got the individual storage areas, the volume, the storage pool there. We've got it all sort of laid out there, and it gets more textual over time, but it is definitely a lot more simple compared to that of the UniFi side, which kind of throws a lot of that information at you. You've got the invitation there to change protection from 1 to 2 disk failover, and you can separate into different options at the top. But even when we look at the storage manager there at the top left of the UniFi dashboard, it is simpler, but it is kind of squashed there in the corner. The point I'm making is the Synology side is a lot more of a chewable, user-friendly interface, and the UniFi one, although not complex, is definitely geared more towards existing UniFi users. Next up, let's talk about security and the way it's handled on both of these platforms. Starting again with the UniFi platform, I'm just going to log out of this system here, just to show you what the default interface would be. I've been accessing the UniFi system there via UI.com this whole time, and although you can still access it via the IP, a lot of the more stringent security settings do require internet access. And if I log out of the Synology side of things, again, we'll log out, sign out there. You're able to see that they've got not a dissimilar kind of login username structure. So for example, when I go on the UniFi system, I can go ahead, enter my login information there. And then when I sign in, it will ask me to enter a 6-digit code. On the Synology side, I can go ahead and log in like normal. And on the Synology side, you do have numerous instances of two-factor authentication you can go for, which I haven't enabled here, but you can have them by going into the security settings. And as you can see, you can either take advantage of Synology's own dedicated sign-in app, not unlike the UniFi Identify application, or you can use a third-party two-factor authenticator, Google Authentication, OTP services, or just use a USB passkey to authenticate your identity there. And again, on the UniFi side, you can go ahead and enter that code or use numerous other options in order for you to log into the device. There is kind of activity monitors, as you can see here, whether you want to trust a device for multi-factor authentication or skip it in future. But the Synology side of things does allow third-party authentication tools there. And the reason that's useful is because the UniFi ones generally, for the most part, will require you to use their own services in order to do it. That isn't to say that UniFi doesn't have secure parameters or at least a number of safeguarding tools to stop, unintended or unexpected or unwanted intruders. Notwithstanding using the Verify app, you can use a lot of their enterprise grade tools, such as a lot of their identification things you can see at the bottom right that allow you to change just how much access a given user has and use this tool as a gateway key onto the system. Again, useful stuff. The Synology side has similar stuff to this, but it just doubles down further on, and they've got different kinds of, as mentioned, their own in-house security tool there, as mentioned earlier on, for single factor authentication, passwordless login as well. But in the back end on the cloud services, they do have quite a lot of behavioral monitoring tools. Alongside that, you've got trusted proxies that you can utilize instead of just IP monitoring. On top of that, alongside two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication, you can enable account protection, which again will monitor different clients and have trusted or untrusted client list. Again, this is available on the UniFi side. But the key point I'm making here is that on the UniFi side, a lot of these tools exist within UI.com or are more reliant on the security and safeguards on the UniFi switches. The NAS system has slightly less compared to the Synology in terms of security safeguards, because UniFi are using more of the pre-existing safeguards they have on those switches and remote relay services, whereas the Synology side has those, but it also has a lot of in-system security as well. Simple things like auto-block, DOS protection levels that can be adjusted quite a lot. Again, the Synology side, I'm not saying that one is inherently more secure than the other, but I'm saying that the UniFi side has significantly more security and safeguard leveraged outside of the system than in the system, whereas the Synology has a good balance of both. Before I forget, it's also worth highlighting that when it comes to the UniFi NAS system, you can utilize UniFi's own relay service to have remote access to the system if you choose. You can also go for local IP access as well. You can use either one of those to access the system. But if you do want remote access, you're kind of only limited for the most part to utilising, at least in a streamlined way, the UniFi platform on its own. Whereas on the Synology side, you've got access to Synology's Quick Connect service, but you've also got access to third-party tools such as Tailscale or TeamViewer. You can even set up DDNS in order to access the system a great deal more streamlined and remotely there. There's only a few extra options on the Synology side, but I think at least in terms of remote access, there are just more ways to do it included in the Synology platform than currently at launch on the UNAS Pro. Next up, applications and services. I think it will come as no surprise whatsoever that in the case of UniFi, as it's the much newer platform, in the world of NAS, it has far fewer applications and services. Predominantly, you're going to be utilizing the Drive application, and this is a file folder management tool here that allows you to create shared storage areas within the system, accessible as files and folders with snapshots and more, all built into the web browser there. There's also client tools rolling out alongside those identity ones I mentioned earlier on to make this more integrated, but they're not quite as universally available at launch. But that's really it. There's no access to the surveillance application, Protect. You're going to have to go and get yourself a UDM product or a UNVR system if you want to have the surveillance platform from them. And there's no support of things like Docker or any kind of container application that would allow you to use a third-party tool on their platform. A lot of it is pre-built in and pre-baked into the software. For example, backups. You don't have a third-party backup tool. All of the backups are integrated at the OS level. Snapshots, sharing files and folders, system configuration, file folder monitoring, system performance. They're all built in and baked into the base level operating system experience rather than added as individual applications and services. Now, on the Synology side, some of that is similar, but not all. So, for example, some systems are hard baked. The file server going in, some of the original base level services for universal search across the system, some of the base level multimedia services there, they're all there at the base level. Same goes with that security advisor. But that said, a lot, and I mean a lot, of its best applications are available both from first and third party via the App Center. You've got multimedia applications in the form of photos, Synology Photos I should say, Audio Station, and till recently at least, Video Station in DSM 7.2.2 where it was removed. On top of that, you've got Active Backup for Business, you've got Hyper Backup, you've got numerous virtual and containerized applications in Docker and Virtual Machine Manager there. On top of that, you've got things like their own surveillance application that allows you to run the NAS as both your storage backup service and a surveillance platform. iSCSI, Target and LUN support there. When it comes to backup, just huge numbers of applications and services, and that's before I've even got onto the third-party applications, common used ones like Plex Media Server and more. And that's before you even get into the fact that you can install beta applications. You can go ahead and install third-party repositories for applications, all on that Synology platform. There's a wide variety of tools in the first and the third party afforded to you on the Synology platform. And all the UniFi platform needs to do, in my opinion, is allow people safe and secure deployment of containers, and then I think it would close the gap quite significantly. But until they installed that, or at the very least allowed Protect on their platform, I still think it's quite early days. Finally, backups, snapshots, failover and recovery. Now, this is something that UNAS really did try to nail down quite significantly. UniFi spent a lot of time nailing down the fundamentals in the case of the UNAS Professional at launch, and I would say in most cases I'm really impressed with what they've done. So, for example, we can see there that bar at the top of the screen. This gives us detailed one-glance information about whether backups were successful, whether backups were unsuccessful, and what backups are currently in action right now on the system, which, is quite useful. Also, setting up backups on the system is really straightforward. So for example, if we go ahead and create ourselves a backup option there, we can go ahead, choose which folders we want on to backup on the system. Then we choose the methodology, whether it is to another UNAS, utilizing SMB or CIFS, or using cloud services like Google Drive and linking them very easily. In the case of the Synology, if we go ahead, I've connected this to this same Synology here. We go ahead, enter that login information, pour that information in there, connect with the service. As you can see, it's connected. Choose how we want to back it up, whether we wanted to create separate repositories each time or overwrite, whether we want to take advantage of a schedule on this backup. We also can select where on the destination NAS we want to back up towards, and it's really that straightforward. Set a schedule and action it when ready. Same goes with snapshots. Snapshots are really easy to action. If we go into Drive, any of these files here, we can go on the other side of the screen, open it up on full screen. We're going to need that side there, and we can go into version histories of our snapshots. We can go back to previous iterations of this data and revert back to them when needed. You can also lock a lot of these snapshots. So if you go back in time and you want to make sure this one never gets overwritten, you can lock it if you choose, unlock it if you don't need it. On top of that, when you do want to restore a snapshot, so if I go back in time to this one and we'll go to restored snapshot, it will also invite me to create another snapshot. So if it does turn out that snapshot restoration didn't help me, I can revert back even though I've gone to a previous installed snapshot prior to that point. It's not too shabby, if you know what I mean. On top of that, there's support of, the usual stuff, such as support of Time Machine there for you Mac users. It's all built in. But I will say when it comes to RAID restoration, things are a mixed bag. So for example, if we go into the storage manager here, you're able to see that right now in the storage manager on this UNAS, I've got full complement of drives in here, and I'm taking advantage of one disk of failure protection. I can set that to a higher protection, or I can go ahead if I choose to create a hot spare. That's really it. I can't create multiple pools. I can't create two RAID 1s, for example, across different drives. And if I install a new drive inside this system, it is automatically absorbed into the system. I will state, though, that there are no limitations in terms of supported hard drives on the UNAS platform. I've installed 24 TB drives in this. I've installed WD, Seagate, Toshiba, all of them. And alongside UNAS's own, or UniFi NAS's own drives, they do support third-party drives, something that Synology have recently kind of got in trouble for in terms of clipping the wings, perhaps one might say, to compatibility and supported hard drives on their support and compatibility pages for their more recent releases. Also on top of that, when it comes to the drives and stuff that you create on this system, you can, if you choose, have encrypted folders and encrypted drives on the system, which would mean that then you can have areas of storage on the system that can't be easily altered, or at the very least easily accessed via encryption. Again, backup, snapshots, failover, recovery, the options are there. However, the UNAS just can't compete right now with the range of services included on the Synology side. I already touched on one earlier on in the form of Active Backup Suite. Active Backup Suite is just one of the best out there. It is a multi-platform backup tool. It allows you to back up towards standalone PCs, physical servers, file servers, virtual machines, and even restore virtual machines on your physical server if need be on the bare metal, and that is included in the price of the system. The same goes if you want to back up to Google Workspace or Office 365. You can attach those to sync with those SAA services there. On top of that, as mentioned, we have got Hyper Backup. Hyper Backup is another great tool for managing backups between USB, cloud services, and more. You've even got support on there for USB backup, something sadly lacking on the UNAS Pro due to its lack of USB drives. Then on top of that, baked into the system, we mentioned encrypted drives on the UNAS, and of course we have that option as well for creating those encrypted storage areas here on the Synology system. But alongside that encryption, what we can also do is with encryption, also attach write once, read many. Write once, read many, depending on the system you choose to use, will allow you to create areas of storage on the system that simply cannot be deleted, cannot be accidentally hit by ransomware in an erroneous security incident. They can have administration modes or full modes that they can never be deleted by anyone for days, weeks, months, or years. Finally, in the storage stakes, we can look at the storage manager, and again, it does pretty much everything the UNAS Pro does. It allows you to create 1 or 2 disk failovers, but Synology has its own flexible RAID system known as SHR, which will allow you to take advantage of unused areas of storage on larger drives in a way that a traditional RAID won't let you. You can mix and match the hard drives on some Synology NAS systems. On top of that, if you go into the global settings of the storage area, you find out that alongside creating encrypted vault keys, you can go ahead and use their fast repair service. Fast repair will allow you to rebuild your RAID much quicker, as it won't need to build the blank areas. It will just speed over and only build the areas where data originally would have resided. It's a neat little feature, and one that they've done really well to include. Just generally, the ability to use mixed drive arrays, the ability to create multiple storage pools if you choose, and the ability to add SSD cache and more are all things that are rolled into the Synology platform, which again, UNAS has yet to embrace on their platform. And I think ultimately, it's things like this that show the 25-year difference between these two NAS systems in terms of pedigree, in terms of development, and ultimately between the two, their target audience. As mentioned, UniFi have made it abundantly clear they're not trying to compete with Synology, they're trying to create a storage system to exist in their own platform and then build from that, now down to fundamentals. And you've got to give them that. But as a buyer, if you're looking at these two platforms in terms of software, the Synology platform is unsurprisingly just more evolved in the world of NAS. It will come as absolutely no surprise to anyone that on the whole, comparing these two right now at the end of 2024, the Synology is just coming out of this a great deal stronger. They got the larger range, the more established software, the greater degree of application services, client tools and more, and a better degree of flexibility across their portfolio. But we have to keep in mind, of course, that is thanks to all those decades in the biz and the pedigree for them being one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name, in network attached storage. UniFi, on the other hand, are entering this field today. They're entering in this field at the end of 2024, and I would argue if they expand into it with the same vigor, range, and overall complete solution mindset that they have done with their switches and a lot of their router solutions and overall network management, both at the front panel end and to do with the hardware, I think they're going to do very well and really stretch their muscles into this. I'm not sure that a 7-bay ARM-based solution was the best way to put their first step into this market, but they have done a great job with it at that price point, and what at least they're rolling with. It's a little bit too similar to some of their surveillance solutions, and I wish it arrived with Protect on board, but I can't really complain about the solution at that price point, what it's got, and its integration into an existing UniFi ecosystem is immeasurable. You may be an UniFi ecosystem user that already has a Synology NAS in your environment. If you are using virtual sandbox apps, I hate seagulls, or you are utilizing a lot of their surveillance tools built in, if you're using a lot of the collaboration suite or the multimedia apps, chances are there's not going to be a great deal more for you currently on the UniFi platform. Maybe a year from now, things will change. But ultimately, this is the more established solution, but that shouldn't come as a surprise. But their first solid entry into the world of NAS, I like. I think there's more they could do, and I hope they do, but at least for now, in the Synology versus UniFi discussion, Synology still very much hold the ground well. Thank you so much for watching. There should be a written equivalent of this review below, where I go into a lot more detail, a lot more images, and talk a lot more about the hardware. Check those out if you want to, and of course, if you are interested in buying any of the solutions I talk about on the channel, linked in the description are links to a few different retailers and the best solutions and a few other guides. So if you found this video helpful, and if you were going to buy those solutions from those retailers anyway, please use those links. It results in a small commission coming to me and Eddie here at NAS Compares. It's just us doing this, and it helps us keep doing what we do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.